How many setups should you trade? How many strategies should you have as a trader? Welcome back, and this is a question that I got from a listener. Thank you for that. If you want to send in your question for one of the next podcasts, you can go to Tradeciety.com/podcast. And the question is, what's your opinion on being a jack of all trades or having a so-called niche strategy? This is a very, very important question, and I think it's because many traders not necessarily struggle with it, but ask themselves this question. And I think in the beginning, it is good to be focused and have a focus on developing one, maybe two strategies. Why? Because you will not know how to organize yourself very effectively in the beginning. And the problem of having too many strategies at the beginning is that you will be all over the place, especially if the strategies that you are trading are very, very different. So if you are trading one reversal trading strategy and one trend following strategy, for example, it's very easy to force yourself and to talk yourself into a trade all the time because, well, either it's a reversal or it's a trend. Of course, there are subtle differences, but you will very easily find reasons to always be in a trade. So if you are starting out or if you are just looking for a path for more consistency, I recommend that you focus on maybe two patterns, two strategies that are kind of similar and not too different. For example, when I talk to my students, especially the price action students, then in the course they will see that there are roughly 10, 11 different patterns. They're all quite similar, but there are still differences. So what I always recommend is that pick 2 or 3 setups in the beginning and try to master them. The great thing about this is that if you are only looking for 1 or 2, maybe 3 certain patterns on your charts, you will learn so much about those patterns that the learning curve will be accelerated. So if you are, for example, only trading head and shoulders, and there are many, many different head and shoulders, there are so many variations about head and shoulders that most traders are not even aware of. What is the difference between if you have a very high head compared to if the head is very shallow? What is the difference if your right shoulder is very small compared to a very deep right shoulder? What is the difference if the breakout happens very fast versus a very slow rolling over market below the neckline? What is the difference between a head and shoulders where a retest happens and where it doesn't happen? What is the difference between when the retest violates the neckline versus when it comes close or misses the neckline? And I could go on for this for hours and hours for all different patterns. And most traders, when I tell them trade the head and shoulders, they just turn around and walk away and say, you have no idea what you're talking about. Head and shoulders don't work. And this is complete nonsense. And then I immediately know that this trader will never be profitable because he is, as I said in my book, he's engaging in this template thinking where all he's doing is trying to hunt those template patterns. He thinks that, okay, there's one head and shoulders, I want to trade head and shoulders. And then he gets frustrated after 2 or 3 trades because obviously the market doesn't care what he thinks, and the market is behaving differently and is not adhering to these textbook patterns. The market is very, very dynamic, and every trade, every chart will look a little bit different. But if I tell my students, okay, look at a head and shoulders and look at those 5 or 6 or 7 variations of a head and shoulders, and then people will come back to me and say, just yesterday somebody messaged me and said, you make it look so simple, it's not easy, but it's so powerful. And this is true, and people will be able to read their charts in a very, very different way. And you will pick up so many nuances that you have previously missed because maybe you are trying to catch all the different trades and you're always trying to be in a trade. But just focusing on 2 or 3 patterns and a few variations of those, you will learn so much. I can almost guarantee you that. I did that for years and years. I've been trading Forex now for over 12 to 13 years. And I would trade 1 or 2 patterns for 2 or 3 years at a time until I completely mastered them. I can pull up a chart now, and because over the years I've always added pattern after pattern after pattern. Once I felt comfortable with one, I added another one. And if I wouldn't have done that, and if I would have just started trading all the patterns at the same time, I would probably still be lost. But now I can pull up any chart and I can read it within a second. And this is, I think, very, very important that many traders miss in the beginning. They don't want to work on this groundwork. They don't want to work on the fundamentals. They want to get right into the extreme specific and the nitty-gritty, the advanced, and just trade all the time. And I understand that, but this is not how trading works. So I think at the beginning, focus on being a niche trader, a one-trick pony. It does work. I know professional traders who trade for funds, who trade millions and millions, and they just trade one simple setup day in, day out, every day the same thing. And the trades will roughly look the same, but there are still variations to them. And you will never be able to trade profitably if you don't learn to accept that the market is dynamic. And even though you might trade one setup, the two trades will never look alike. You're not trading like an algorithm that is always following the same rules, but we as discretionary traders, and that's our advantage, we can actually learn to read the subtle differences, and we can react to the markets that are changing. Sometimes you have more volatility, sometimes you have less. Sometimes you need to get out of the trade before that, and sometimes you can let your trade run a little bit longer. And sometimes it looks a little bit different here, and sometimes it looks a little bit different there. And this is where you will then evolve as a trader. You will learn so much that you can add more and more patterns as you go, if you feel the need for it. Some traders even don't. They like to specialize in just a pattern and then 10 different variations of it. And that's fun too, because you become really a master and you will be able to see, okay, this is head and shoulders, but I've seen this before, and this is then what happens because the right shoulder looks a certain way and the left shoulder has done this in the past. So this is a really, really, I think, a very, very important point. I hope somebody listens to that, somebody uses my advice, and I almost guarantee you that you will see a big improvement in your trading and definitely in how you approach your trading.